Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Today, we're taking a drive you won't return from through the forgotten roads of Texas where 20 people vanished without a trace, leaving behind nothing but their vehicles, cryptic footprints, and chilling mystery. These aren't legends. They're real, documented disappearances that still baffle locals, police, and even seasoned truckers. From fog-covered highways near Richards to ghost detours outside Beaumont, these are the roads where reality bends, time stutters, and something unseen waits in the dark. You're about to hear stories so terrifying they'll make you think twice about your next road trip through the Lone Star State. But before we begin, here's something strange. Most viewers vanish before they subscribe, and that's a mistake. Because here at Creepy Vibes, we bring you the darkest, rawest, most disturbing horror stories the internet dares to tell. So don't disappear like the rest. Hit that subscribe button now. And tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Because on these Texas roads, the night creeps in fast, and once the sun dips behind the hills, some people are never seen again. Now, buckle up, we're headed straight into the darkness. It's funny what sticks in your mind when you've driven the same road for years. A crooked fence post, that mailbox shaped like a cow, a bent road sign from a forgotten crash. For me, it was that stretch of Farm Road 1486 near Richards, Texas. About 6 miles of two-lane blacktop with nothing but pine woods and dead radio silence. My father used to call it the place where the world forgets you. I never knew what he meant until the night I saw the man walking alone in the fog. It was late October, one of those nights where the temperature drops so fast the road steams. I was coming back from a job out in Navasota, fixing an old man's generator that had gone out again. I was tired, pissed, and starving. I remember flipping through static trying to find something on the radio, but there's nothing out there once you pass Shiro. Just fuzz and the occasional burst of Spanish gospel that fades as quick as it comes. I hit that familiar curve near the 3rd cattle gate. Always watch for deer there when I saw him, a man, walking right along the edge of the road, back to traffic, head down, hands swinging at his sides. Nothing unusual about that, except there hadn't been another car for 20 minutes, and it was well past midnight. He wore a dirty white button-up, jeans stiff with dust, and no shoes. No pack, no flashlight, no reflective gear. Just walking like he had nowhere to go but death. I slowed down. It's what you do out here. Could be a drunk, could be someone who crashed into a ditch, could be a kid running away. Hell, could have been me 30 years ago. I rolled down the window and said, "Hey buddy, you all right?" He didn't turn, didn't even flinch, just kept walking. Slow, steady. I pulled up beside him, matching his pace. "You need help? I can give you a ride into town." Still nothing. That's when I noticed the air, not just cold wrong, heavy, like breathing through a wet rag. The kind of cold that makes your teeth ache and your skin crawl, like you're standing too close to something that shouldn't be there. I hit the brakes hard and stepped out. The door creaked open like a scream, and as soon as I set my boots on the pavement, fog rolled in, thick and fast, like it had been waiting just out of sight. I looked around, nothing but white mist and silence. No bugs, no wind. Even the crickets had stopped. The man was gone. I swear to God, he was right there. I hadn't taken my eyes off him for more than a second, but the road ahead was empty. Just 2 fading beams of my headlights cutting through the fog. I turned around to check behind me, and there he was, standing in the middle of the road, 30 feet away, facing me now. His face was off, not disfigured, not bloody, just wrong, like someone had tried to draw a face from memory and got most of it right, but not all. His eyes were too far apart, his smile too wide. His neck bent slightly to one side as if broken long ago. I couldn't move. My legs locked. Something primal took over. That caveman part of the brain that says, don't look at it. Don't. Speak. Don't run. Just don't. But I couldn't help myself. What do you want? I asked. He smiled wider, and I saw something dark slide out from the corners of his mouth, like oil or tar. Could hit the road in slow, thick drops, hissing on the asphalt like acid. Then he lifted his hand and pointed not at me, but past me. Turned just in time to see my truck door slam shut on its own. The engine revved. Headlights brightened. The radio came alive with static so loud it hurt. I ran. Stupid, I know. I don't remember making the choice. My body just took over. I dove into the cab, slammed it in reverse, and tore out of there like the devil himself was chasing me. But not before I saw him vanish, like smoke sucked into the trees. 1 second there, the next gone. I didn't stop until I hit the lights. Of Richards. I pulled into the gas station, still open, still buzzing with moths and the smell of stale diesel. The guy behind the counter took one look at me and said, "You saw him, didn't you?" I didn't answer. "You came down 1486. He said, "You saw the night driver." I sat down on the curb and shook, trying not to puke. He brought me a coffee and said nothing more. I didn't go back down that road for months, but the stories started to find me. People disappearing. Cars left running, headlights on, doors open. The local cops chalk it up to drugs, drunk driving. Coyotes, the usual, but they don't go out there either. Not after dark. There's something about Farm Road 1486, something buried deep in the woods, old and hungry. It walks that stretch looking like a man, waiting for the next kind soul to stop. It doesn't need to chase you. All it needs is your attention. Just one moment of hesitation. Just one question, "You okay?" And that's all it takes. Now I drive the long way. Adds an hour to my trip, but I don't care. I've seen what waits on that road. And every once in a while, just as I'm falling asleep, I hear footsteps outside the window. Bare feet, slow and steady. I tell myself it's wind, just wind, but I never check. Because I know what I'll see if I do, and I don't think I'd. Make it back next time. Not all roads take you home. Some take you with them. The stretch of Highway 90 west of Brackettville isn't much to look at in the daylight scrub brush. Hard-pan soil and old barbed wire fences that don't seem to be keeping anything in or out anymore. But when night falls, especially after the sun sinks behind the hills and the last rays leave the dry earth cold, that road becomes something else entirely. Locals know better than to stop out there. They keep their eyes ahead, hands on the wheel, and if something catches their attention, smoke, light, movement in the brush, they look the other way and press the gas a little harder. It started again. 2 weeks before they put up the warning sign, the one that just says, "Nitrogen monoxide stopping next 3 miles" in reflective yellow. No one from the State Department claimed responsibility for it, and no construction crew remembered installing it. But it's there now, standing crookedly in the dirt like it knows something. The first to disappear that year was a traveling nurse named Eliza Moreno. She was heading back to Del Rio from a weekend with her sister in Uvalde, passing through Brackettville just before midnight. She texted a friend around 11:17 p.m., said she saw smoke near the side of the road and thought, maybe there was a grass fire. She was going to pull over and call it in, being the good sort of person who didn't just pass by something that might hurt someone else. The message went through. Her phone kept pinging towers for another 6 hours stationary. Then it went dead. When the sheriff's deputies found her car, it was exactly where her location had dropped, 1.5 miles west of town. The car was still idling, lights on low beam. Her purse was on the passenger seat, phone in the Q folder. But the strange part, The part they kept from the public was the state of the tires. All 4 of them were melted flat into black puddles, like someone had held a blowtorch to each one. The ground beneath the car was scorched, but the brush around it wasn't burned, just dry and rustling like it always was. That would have been dismissed as a freak electrical fire, maybe blamed on a short circuit or bad luck, if it wasn't for what was found in the car's dashcam footage. Eliza's car had a small suction-mounted camera facing forward. It recorded the road as it had for the past several hours of her journey. But the final 43 seconds were different. The dashcam showed smoke rising from the shoulder, a thin, dark plume, barely visible in the headlights. As she slowed down, the footage caught flickering shapes just beyond the fence line. Not deer, not coyotes, nothing like that. These shadows moved too smoothly, too rhythmically, like they weren't walking but floating, jerking toward the road 1 inch at a time. Then the audio cut in. At first, you hear nothing, then something like whispering. Not one voice, but many, overlapping, murmuring in a language no one could place. The whispers rose in pitch, then volume, until they sounded like insects buzzing inside the mic. The smoke thickened, curling toward the windshield like a living thing, and then the video glitched, not in the way that cheap cameras sometimes freeze or pixelate, but like something had pressed on the lens from the inside. The frame warped, darkened, then cleared for just a second, and in that second, there was something at the center of the road. A figure. It stood too tall, arms too long, like its joints were set backward. Its face was featureless, save for what looked like a split running from forehead to chin, faintly glowing like an ember that had nearly gone out. Then nothing. The next frame was static. The same night, 3 kids on their way home from a house party near Fort Clark Springs saw the same smoke. They didn't stop, but they did slow down. One of them, sitting in the back seat, pulled out his phone and started recording, laughing, joking, thinking it was probably just a controlled burn or a drunk trying to make a campfire in the brush. They uploaded the footage to TikTok an hour later, tagged it with something dumb like Ghost Fire Challenge. The video went viral. Not because of what they said or how they screamed when the camera went dark, but because of what showed up behind them when the footage was slowed down. Frame by frame, you could see shadows moving parallel to their car. Not in the field, but in the reflection of the rear passenger window. First 1, then 3. All identical, each with that same glowing split where a face should be. People began calling it the burnt trail, mostly online. Reddit threads lit up with stories of people who pulled over near Bracketville and felt the air turn too cold for Texas, who walked out into the brush and heard things whisper their names, who smelled fire and ash but no flame ever came. One story claimed a drone was sent out there by a local paranormal group. It flew 200 feet into the smoke before the signal cut out. When they retrieved it the next morning, the drone's body was intact, but its camera lens was cracked clean down the center, and the SD card inside was fused into the plastic. No footage. No answers. Then came the Peterson family. Tourists from out of state passing through on their way to Big Bend. Their GPS led them slightly off the main road, down an old county route that paralleled the highway for a few miles. The dad pulled over when they saw the smoke. Said later he thought it was just some weird campfire. His wife stayed in the car with their youngest. He and his oldest son, a high school senior named Ben, walked toward the brush, flashlights in hand. The mom heard nothing for 10 minutes, then screaming. Only it wasn't them. The screams were too many, too layered, like dozens of voices trying to echo the same panic at once. By the time authorities found the scene, the car was empty, doors flung open, headlights still running, but not a single footprint on the ground. Just ash thin, Gray ash covering the grass like snowfall. And 3 melted patches where tires used to be. No one talks much about the burnt trail anymore. The warnings are there for those who know what to look for. That crooked sign, the sudden drop in signal, the thick air even when it hasn't rained in weeks, but still people pull over. Curious ones, brave ones, the kind who think nothing bad ever happens to them. And sometimes on the clearest of nights, you can still see it from a distance, the faint glow of something flickering in the brush, smoke curling up into a windless sky, and shadows that don't belong to anything living. And if you stop, if you roll down your window or take out your phone to record it, you might just hear the whispers. They never say much, just your name again and again, like they're trying it on to see how it feels in their mouths, and then you're gone. Not with a scream, not with a bang. Just silence, scorched earth. And a trail that's always hungry. A mile east of Eden, Texas, where the dry scrubland meets the old asphalt stretch of Highway 87, there's a piece of road that locals don't talk about unless they've been drinking too long or grieving too hard. It's flat, unremarkable, bordered by fields of mesquite and barbed wire fences barely standing, but everyone who's lived around there long enough knows there's something wrong with it. No signs warn you. No flashing lights or barricades. Just a mile of road that, when crossed at night, makes the world behind your windshield feel like it's holding its breath. It starts subtle. If you've got music on, it gets drowned out by static, like someone's tuning in with a rusty knob from the other side of the grave. Then your engine stutters, not stops, just hiccups, like it's thinking about shutting down. Dogs riding with their owners go quiet first. Then they start growling at empty air. If they're outside, they bolt, or worse, freeze like something cold just brushed their souls. Phones don't work. Maps won't load. And if you're unlucky enough to roll your window down, you'll hear them. The voices. Low and whispery at first, like a breeze through tall grass. Then louder still, until it's not a whisper but a plea or a moan or your name being spoken by someone who's supposed to be dead. More than a few folks have stopped the car, cracked open the door, thinking they heard a child crying or a woman screaming from the field. That's how they get you, because it's never just a sound. It's a memory. It's your worst regret clawing its way through the airwaves. Back in '91, there was a man named Curtis Ray Buckner who worked the oil fields outside Menard. Big guy, drank too much, never married. One night on his way home, he took the long route through Eden, claimed he liked the silence. His Chevy was found idling on the side of that stretch the next morning. Driver's side door wide open, headlights still on. All they found inside was Curtis's hat, one boot, and the scent of burned hair. Not a drop of blood, not a struggle. Just an impression in the dirt like someone had lain down and dissolved. The sheriff's department chalked it up to heat stroke or one of those desert disappearances that happen in the backcountry, but everyone who'd ever heard the stories knew exactly where he'd gone. That mile eats people, not fast, not with teeth. It waits, it invites, and then it swallows. 3 years ago, I drove it myself, not because I didn't know better hell. I grew up 20 miles from Eden, and my daddy told me never to go past Sayers Bend after sunset. But I was in a bad place. Divorce had taken the last of my pride, and I'd buried my brother the week before. I remember thinking, as I passed the town sign for Eden, that maybe I wanted to see if the stories were true. Maybe I wanted to believe there was something left out here more terrifying than life itself. Something to make the pain small. It was just past 1 a.m. The moon was a sliver. My radio cut out first, replaced by a low buzzing like insects crawling inside my ears. Then the dash lights dimmed, flickered, and came back on. I gripped the wheel tight. I was sweating cold. And then I heard her my mama's voice soft, sad, singing, "You are my sunshine." My only sunshine. She'd been dead 5 years. Buried. In a closed casket after the fire that took her trailer and everything in it. I hadn't heard that lullaby since I was a kid, but it was her voice. I don't care what anyone says, it was her voice. Then came the thump in the trunk. I hadn't put anything back there. My hands started shaking, and the wheel jerked a little left. I corrected and kept going. But then the car slowed. Not because I touched the brake, it just started losing speed, like it was driving through wet cement. The windshield began to fog, though the air outside was dry as bone. And then I heard the second voice my brother Tommy. "Let me out," he said from the back seat. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it. Please, I'm so cold." I couldn't look in the mirror. I wouldn't, but I saw something in the corner of my eye, something shifting in the back seat. A dark shape moving slow like it was trying not to wake me. Then came the knock on the passenger window. I swear to God, I almost wrecked the damn car right there. I turned my head and there she was, a girl, maybe 9, maybe 11. Face dirty, lips cracked, her eyes were wrong. Not just sad or scared empty. Like the sockets were deep holes and her stare was reaching out through them to pull me in. "Help me," she mouthed. I slammed the gas. The tires screeched, and for a second I thought I felt fingers scrape across the hood like someone had tried to hold on. The car screamed forward, headlights flickering like a dying heart. And just as fast as it began, it was gone. The radio clicked. Back to life. The engine purred again. My phone buzzed with 3 missed calls from no one. When I looked back in the rearview mirror, the road behind me looked like any other. No girl. No voices. No shadows. I didn't sleep for 3 nights. Week later, I went back in daylight. Parked just before the stretch and walked the edge of the shoulder. Didn't step on the asphalt. No way. But I watched the wind didn't blow on that mile. Birds didn't fly overhead. And there was a smell like rain on old stone mixed with something sweet and rotting, like funeral lily left too long in the sun. I found tire tracks. Lots of them. Deep ones, as if people had braked hard or turned sharp. I also found shoes, not a pair, just singles. Old sneakers, boots, one child's pink sandal have buried in the dust. The town doesn't acknowledge it, not officially. You. Ask someone in Eden about it. They'll change the subject or tell you to go talk to the sheriff. But the sheriff died in 2004, gunshot to the head. They say he left a note that just said, "They're not echoes." Some say it's an old Comanche burial ground. Others blame a chemical spill from some military convoy back in the 60s. One guy swore it was a tear in reality, a wound that never healed. I don't know what to believe. I only know I didn't imagine it. There are folks still missing Curtis. A hitchhiker named Rosa, a trucker named Dean Palmer, even a highway patrol officer who'd been called in after a crash report but never made it back. His cruiser was found facing the woods with the lights still flashing. His dash cam melted from the inside out, and if you ask me why I'm telling you this, it's because I drove past Eden last week and saw a fresh cross planted on the side of the road. New flowers. Fresh paint. A small teddy bear zip-tied to the post. Someone else went walking into that mile. And, I'm telling you now, if you're ever driving east of Eden at night and your radio goes quiet and your dog starts whining, and you feel like someone's sitting behind you whispering your name, don't stop. Not for the voices, not for the crying, not for the girl on the side of the road. Just keep going, because the mile doesn't forget, and it's always hungry. In 1997, the Hill County Transport Convoy rolled southbound on Highway 87 toward San Angelo, cutting through the deep dark belly of Texas where the air gets still and the land forgets you're there. The sky that night was heavy and low, clouded, in a kind of yellowish haze that made the moon look sick. 3 trucks made up the convoy old Peterbilts running livestock trailers, loaded with empty cages from the stockyards up in Bollinger. It was just supposed to be a quiet haul back to base, nothing dangerous. Just back roads, cigarettes, and diesel hum. The first truck was driven by Vic Traney, a tall, leather-skinned man who wore his cap so tight the bill curved like a blade. Behind him was Luis Dominguez, known for never shutting up on the CB, a habit Vic found annoying but oddly comforting. The last truck belonged to a young guy named Clay McConnell. Clay was new, green around the ears, but solid. Farm boy, quiet, the kind of man who didn't talk unless he had to. He drove slower than the other 2 but kept his distance tight old-school discipline. Somewhere a few miles north of Eden, near the junction where Highway 87 spits off into a spiderweb of county roads, the radio started acting funny. Not just static, not just signal fade. It was voices, and not ones they recognized. Vic was the first to hear it. His country station fizzled out and a high, wailing screech cut in like something between a baby crying and metal on metal. Then came a voice, raspy and low, repeating a phrase he couldn't make out except for the last 2 words. ... behind. You, Vic flinched. Checked his mirrors. Nothing. He flipped channels, picked up Luce's CB chatter, and interrupted. You getting that screeching too? Vic asked, voice tight. Hell yes, brother, Luis answered. Sounds like the devil. Himself's trying to DJ tonight. Scared the crap out of me. Clay, you copy? Silence? Clay? Vic tried again. Still nothing. Vic squinted in the mirror. Clay's headlights were still there, 2 small yellow eyes trailing steady behind Luce's truck. That was a relief, but something didn't feel right. The light looked ... dimmer. They passed a county marker then, one of those crooked, rust-bitten signs on a leaning post that read CR39. The road was narrow, cracked in places, and dipped into a gully of trees that looked blacker than night itself. They never took that road. Nobody did. It had a reputation, though the details varied with each telling. Some said witches once lived out there. Others blamed old satanic cults, ghost trains, wartime experiments, you name it. But everyone agreed. On one thing, it was cursed. And the locals had another name for it. The Screaming Mile. Vic always figured that was bullshit. A nickname born from too much whiskey and too many stories told under low porch lights. But when he saw Luce's right, blinkers suddenly flash, signaling a turn onto CR39, something in his gut twisted. Luis, what the hell are you doing? Wasn't me, Vic. He's turning, Luis said, his voice hushed now. Clay's cutting down CR39. Swear to God, he just blew past me and veered right. I didn't even see him pass. Vic didn't believe him. He didn't want to. But when he looked in his own mirror again, Clay's lights were gone. Vic slammed the brakes and pulled over, his rig groaning as it came to a stop on the gravel shoulder. Luis pulled in behind him. The 2 men got out, dust swirling around their boots. For a long second they just stood there, looking back down the road. Nothing. No headlights, no taillights, no engine rumble. He wouldn't just turn, Vic muttered, staring into the darkness where CR39 swallowed the land. Not without saying something. Luis nodded slowly. He's not answering the CB, and I don't see tracks on the shoulder. But I swear he passed me, Vic, like a shadow. They argued for another minute, then did what nobody sane would have done. They followed. CR39 was like a scar across the land. Twisted, rough, lined with barbed wire fences that had long since rusted through. Mesquite trees leaned over the road like mourners. A smell filled the air the deeper they went. Not rot, not. Exactly. More like wet dirt and old smoke. They drove slow, scanning the ditches and edges of the woods. Their high beams caught nothing but dust and the occasional roadkill that looked more mangled than usual. About a mile in, Luis slammed his brakes. What? Vic asked over the CB. His truck, Luis breathed. Jesus, I found it. Vic pulled. Up beside him, hard hammering. Clay's Peterbilt was there, parked halfway off the road, the engine off but the hazard lights still blinking. The passenger door was open. One of his boots lay on the step, the laces frayed like they'd been yanked apart. But Clay wasn't there. Vic climbed out, flashlight in hand. The beam cut across the gravel, the cab, the door. No blood. No sign of a struggle. Just IHANDPRINT. It was smeared across the side mirror, deep red and too big. Not shaped right either. 5 fingers sure, but the thumb curved too low and the whole thing seemed stretched. It looked burned on. Like someone had pressed their hand against the mirror after dipping it in boiling paint. Vic reached out to touch it. Don't, Luis warned. Don't even. They searched the woods. For hours. Calling Clay's name until their voices cracked. They walked the full stretch of the mile and never saw a thing. No signs, no footprints, no wildlife even. The whole place felt drained. Like it was waiting for something. Vic said it felt like walking through someone's mouth. At dawn, they returned to Clay's truck. The handprint was gone, not smeared, not faded, just gone. The mirror was clean and cold. They called the sheriff. Deputies came. Search parties swept the area for days. Nothing turned up. No scent trail, no clothes, not even a dropped flashlight. Clay McConnell had vanished, as if he'd stepped off the earth. The only thing left was his rig and the report sealed and forgotten after the department labeled it a voluntary disappearance. But Louise never bought that. Neither did Vic. Vic stopped driving a year later. Took to drinking. Said every time he heard static on the radio, he felt that hand again just behind him, on his shoulder. Louise moved to Arizona and wouldn't take any job east of El Paso. They both claimed that sometimes, usually on nights when the wind came down hard from the hills, they'd hear something in the distance, like a freight horn mixed with a scream. They called it the Screaming Mile. And the thing is, truckers still talk about that stretch of CR 39. The handprint has reappeared since twice in 20 years, always on a different truck, always on the side mirror, and always followed by a missing driver. Locals say it's the road itself. Some old curse or breach in the world where things slip through and hunger still. Others say it's Clay, that he never left, that he walks that road barefoot, luring others into the brush where no light can follow. Whatever it is, one truth sticks. If your radio howls and the voice says behind you, don't look. Don't stop. And whatever you do, don't take the turn onto CR 39. Not even for a friend. The first time anyone mentioned the glowing green exit sign to Deputy Travis Murdoch, he was parked just outside of Dumas, sipping lukewarm coffee and watching the heat wave shimmer off the hood of his cruiser. A trucker, pale and shaking, flagged him down with wild eyes and a voice trembling like a taut wire. I swear to God. The man kept saying, I took that exit last night. Clear as day. Said Ashgrove to 2 miles. I just needed a place to rest. Whole damn place looked like something out of Leave It to Beaver. Diners, jukeboxes, girls in poodle skirts, even soda fountains. But when I tried to leave, Travis narrowed his eyes. What happened? I couldn't find the highway again. I circled and circled. Streets didn't make sense. Folks just kept smiling, saying, why leave? Ain't it perfect here? He leaned in. Something's wrong there, officer. Something real wrong. Travis filed the report under unverified, marked him down as sleep-deprived, possibly hallucinating, and let it go, until it happened again, and again. Over the next month, 5 separate travelers, including a schoolteacher, a young couple, and a Greyhound bus driver, reported the exact same thing. The glowing green exit sign, the perfect little town, the smiling faces, the trap. The problem was, there wasn't an ash grove. Not on any map, not on any record from the county. No exit, no town. So Travis drove the stretch himself one night. The road between Amarillo and Dumas was long, flat, and mostly empty, cutting through wheat fields and empty plains. Around midnight, somewhere near mile marker 92, the radio crackled, then went dead. Not static, just gone, like someone had yanked out the antenna. Then, faintly, through the windshield, he saw it, a glowing green exit sign ahead. It pulsed slightly, not flickering, but more alive. As if it breathed, the sign read Ashgrove 2 miles. Travis slowed down. A logical voice in his head screamed to drive on. But that other voice, the one buried deeper, curled up from his gut like a cold finger. Go see, you need to see. He took the exit. The off-ramp was smooth and freshly paved. Not a crack or pothole in sight, which was strange for these parts. Then came the trees, tall, thick pines that shouldn't have been growing in the middle of the Texas panhandle. They flanked the road like sentries, needles glistening silver under the moonlight dot. After 2 miles, the road opened into a town square right out of a 1950s postcard. Neon signs hummed lazily. The diner on the corner had checkerboard tiles and a big, chrome-trimmed jukebox playing Earth Angel. Across the street, a barber pole spun slowly. Kids with slicked hair rode bikes past the town theater, which was playing Rebel Without a Cause. A banner above the street said, "Welcome to Ashgrove, a perfect place for perfect people. Travis." Parked and stepped out. The air smelled of fried dough and honeysuckle. Not a single mosquito buzzed. A blonde waitress in a pink skirt waved from the diner. "Well, hey there, stranger," she called, voice syrupy sweet. "Coffee's hot, pie's fresh." He nodded warily and stepped inside. The booths were filled with smiling folksmen in fedoras reading newspapers, women in polka-dot dresses chatting over milkshakes. Everyone turned to look at him. Everyone smiled. The waitress led him to a booth by the window. "You new in town?" "Just passing through," he said, glancing around. The cook behind the counter laughed. "Ain't nobody just passing through." "Son," Travis blinked. "Excuse me?" The waitress's smile didn't falter. "You'll love it here. Everyone does. No stress, no war, no hate. Just peace and good company." She leaned in. "And we've been waiting for someone just like you." The pie came, cherry, too red, too glossy. He didn't eat it. Instead, he excused himself, said he needed a walk. But when he stepped outside, something was wrong. The square looked the same, but the angles were off. The streets didn't line up. The theater was where the diner had been. The lights buzzed louder. He turned to his car, and it was gone, not stolen, just not there. As if it never had been, he started walking. Street after street. All the houses looked pristine, all the yards trimmed. All the porches had glowing lanterns and rocking chairs that creaked without wind. Doors stood open, and behind them, darkness. Not shadows, not rooms. Just void. People emerged from those doors. The same smiles, the same clothes. Dozens of them surrounding him. Why leave? They asked in unison, lips moving too slowly like badly dubbed film. Ain't it perfect here? He ran. Through alleys, across picket fences, but the streets looped. He saw the same mailbox 3 times. He passed a playground where the merry-go-round spun without children. Laughter came from nowhere. A dog barked, except it sounded like a man barking. In pain. Then came the music again. Earth Angel, slowed down. Warped. Playing backwards, he ducked into a garage. Shut the door. Breath. There, scrawled on the inside wall in grease, were words. Don't talk to them. Don't eat. Don't smile. There's a way out, but it only shows itself when you're not looking for it. He sat in that garage for hours, until the morning light began to change. He opened the door and saw a dirt path behind the shed, one he hadn't seen before. No buildings, just a horizon. He walked. He didn't look back. He stumbled out onto Highway 87 around 6 a.m., covered in dirt, shoes shredded. A passing family stopped. The woman screamed when she saw him. "Are you Travis Murdoch?" she asked. "You've been missing for 3 weeks. They took him to the hospital." He couldn't explain what had happened. The exit was gone. No sign. No ramp. No ash grove. But sometimes on overcast nights, when the moon is thin and the road is empty, drivers swear they see a soft green glow just off Highway 87. Some don't stop. Some do. None of them ever come back. It always starts with the fog. Thick and soupy, the kind that rolls in low and slow, swallowing fences, even the road beneath your wheels. You don't notice it at first. You think it's a patch, just a low dip in the hill or steam, coming off the cattle ponds, but then it doesn't stop. It deepens, it thickens. And soon you're alone, floating through a pale sea where even your headlights give up trying to push through. That's what happened to Dana and her little brother, Micah, driving down County Road 306 outside Llano one November night, coming back from their aunt's house. Dana had driven that stretch hundreds of times. She could have done it with her eyes closed, or so she thought. But that night, the fog rolled in near the intersection of Bluffton Road, thicker than she'd ever seen it. It crawled in with purpose. Coiling around the truck like it knew she was coming, she slowed, squinting through the glass, the windshield wipers squeaking even though it wasn't raining. The fog kissed the windows, icy and wet, and the air smelled like river mud and pine bark soaked in mildew. Micah leaned forward in the passenger seat, peering out like something was just beyond what they could see. Then he said it. Quiet, soft. "Do you see that?" Dana's hands tensed on the wheel. "See what?" He didn't answer. He just pointed. Through the fog, something glowed. Faint and pale, like someone waving a lantern off the road. It wasn't steady. It bobbed up and down, moving deeper into the trees that crowded the fence line. Dana slowed to a crawl. The truck idled forward until the light flickered out. Micah pressed his face to the glass. "It's gone." And then, like an answer, it reappeared on the opposite side of the road this time, farther off. Dana frowned. "It's probably a rancher or a game warden." "At this hour?" Micah asked. "Why would they be walking around out there in the fog?" "I don't know," Dana replied, but her voice lacked confidence. She felt it too, that something was wrong. That light. It had no source, no outline, no shape holding it. It wasn't warm like firelight or yellow like a flashlight. It was blue. Cold blue. And it didn't cast shadows. Then they saw another one. Then a third. They weren't lights anymore. They were orbs drifting, pulsing, alive somehow. Like they were breathing. Dana slowed to a stop right in the middle of the road. The engine purred. The fog coiled and moved, wrapping around the front bumper like it had arms. The lights hovered now. Closer, closer. Micah said, "I think they want us to follow." Dana shot him a glance. "Don't be stupid." "I'm not being stupid. I heard them." "Heard who?" He turned to her, and his eyes were wide and glassy. "They said it's beautiful. They want us to see it too. Dana felt a chill crawl up her spine. She leaned over and locked the passenger door, then the others. You're not getting out. Micah didn't answer. He was staring ahead again. The orbs floated to the edge of the ditch and hovered there like they were waiting for a decision. Dana slammed her foot on the gas. The truck didn't move. The tires spun in place, even though they weren't stuck. In mud, the road beneath them felt slick like glass. The fog pushed harder against the windows now, like it was pressing inward. She turned the wheel. The power steering groaned. The dashboard lights flickered once, then dimmed. Then the radio came on. Not music. Not static voices, dozens, maybe hundreds. All whispering at once, overlapping, saying the same thing. It's beautiful. Come see. Come see. Come see. Dana reached for the dial. It wouldn't turn off. She yanked the keys. Nothing happened. The engine was still running. The lights stayed on. The voices got louder. Micah opened the door. Micah, no. He stepped out like he didn't even hear her, eyes glazed, mouth slightly open. He walked toward the orbs, barefoot now. She didn't know when he took his shoes off. The lights danced ahead of him, teasing, luring. She scrambled out, grabbing for him, but the fog parted like a living thing, like it wanted her to lose him. Her hands hit nothing but mist. Micah! No answer. She followed, stumbling down into the ditch, thorns tearing at her jeans, breath coming short and fast. The lights were farther now. She caught a glimpse of her brother's silhouette disappearing into the woods. Swallowed by gray and pale blue dot, she chased until she hit the barbed wire fence, hands gripping the cold metal, calling his name until her throat ached. Then she saw the last thing. Just before the fog thickened so badly she couldn't even see her hands. She saw the orb swirl around Micah and then collapse inward, like water draining down a sink. His figure snapped rigid. Then he vanished. Gone like he'd never been there. No scream, no sound, just silence, and the orbs disappeared with him. Dana staggered backward, heart pounding. She ran back to the truck, still running, still idling. The radio was silent now. The fog began to lift slowly, reluctantly. She waited there till sunrise. Micah was never found. Her story went public. Folks said she imagined it. Panic. Trauma. Maybe she wandered off and left him. Theories ran wild. But locals, real Llano folks, they knew. They'd seen the lights too. Some admitted it in hushed tones at bars, over beers and worn pool tables. Others said their granddaddies used to tell stories about them, lantern men, they called. Spirits that lured travelers off the path with beauty so pure you forgot everything else. You walked right out of your life. Some said the lights were from something older than ghosts, something that came before people even had names for fear. Something that fed on longing. The town sheriff, old Mitch Carmichael, had his own story. He never told it official, but once. During a long night shift, he said he saw a whole family standing barefoot in the middle of the road on CR 309. Mom, Dad, 2 kids. They were smiling, looking off into the woods. He pulled over, got out, called to them. They didn't answer. Just walked into the trees, one by one. No flashlights. No phones. Nothing. He called for backup. They searched for 2 days. Not a footprint, not a sock. Not even the tire tracks from his own cruiser. The fog always came back, thick and greedy. The lights came too. People still report seeing them, always on the back roads, always during fog. The last words heard from the people, who vanish, are always the same. It's beautiful. And the lights drift on, waiting. It was always around 2 a.m. when she showed up, the hour when the blacktop had cooled just enough to steam faintly under a full moon. and the only lights for miles were the blinkers at the Schulenburg Railroad crossing. Folks passing through. That lake usually had somewhere to be truckers hauling overnight loads, kids on long drives back from Austin or Houston, loners trying to outrun something. But every now and then, someone stopped when they saw her. They always described the same thing: a woman in white. Not pure white, not glowing. More like a wedding dress that had seen too many winters in an attic, streaked with gray dust and the damp of 100 foggy nights. She stood just past the tracks, not on the road, not on the gravel, but on the grassy lip where the railroad company hadn't bothered to mow in years. Her arms hung limp at her sides. Her face, well, no one remembered much about her face. Just that she had one, and that it was sad in a way that stuck to your ribs like cold soup. A local mechanic named Tony Ramirez was the first person I ever heard mention her. This was back in '92, when Schulenburg still had a midnight diner and people didn't lock their doors unless they had something worth stealing. Tony'd been driving back from La Grange after a late poker night. He wasn't drunk, he swore. Up and down, but tired. He was passing the crossing when he saw her in the corner of his headlights, white dress, barefoot, standing still like she'd been waiting. He pulled over, of course. Everyone did back then. It was Texas after all. You didn't leave a woman stranded in the middle of the night, not in the middle of nowhere. She didn't say anything at first, he told me years later, hands trembling over a coffee cup. At the VFW, just got in the backseat.
Real smooth, like she knew I'd offer.
Then she whispered, "Take me home." He drove 5 miles before he realized she wasn't back there anymore. She didn't open the door, didn't say goodbye. One moment, he was talking to her, asking where she lived, if she was okay, and fev. The next, the car was empty. The only sound his own voice echoing off the dash. He didn't tell anyone for days. Thought he was going crazy. When he finally did, the sheriff at the time just nodded and told him to keep quiet. Said there were already enough stories. That was the beginning of it for me. I started asking around, tracking similar reports, and sure enough, they trickled in odd little stories that mostly ended with the car found miles away. Engine off, seatbelt still buckled, and no driver inside. The worst ones were the ones with no cars at all. Just tire tracks veering off into fields, into ditches, into the thickets of mesquite where nobody ever walked. The kind of places snakes owned. The kind of places you don't go looking unless you're not planning on coming back. In 2003, a college kid named Bryce Maddox went missing. He was driving a borrowed Honda Civic from San Marcos to Houston and took the old backroad route to avoid traffic. He called his girlfriend around 1:40 a.m., told her he'd be home in 2 hours. Then nothing. They found the car near Lavaca County 3 days later. The engine was cold, headlights off, driver's door open. His phone was still on the seat, unlocked. The last thing it played was a voicemail from her. The seatbelt was buckled, but Bryce wasn't in the car. His parents posted flyers from Austin to Beaumont, offered a reward, even got a segment on the local news. The car sat in the impound for weeks until the tow guy Roger Blaine noticed something. A faint handprint on the inside of the rear window, too small to be braces, too narrow. Like a woman's, Roger swore the print was warm when he touched it. Like breath on glass that hadn't faded yet. Over the years, a pattern took shape. The crossing became a landmark for the strange, a sliver of land where reality seemed to hum. At a different pitch. Radios fizzled there, like the static had teeth. Dogs barked at nothing. Cats wouldn't cross it. The locals stopped using that route altogether after dark. They called her the Bride, but no one knew if she'd ever married. Some said she was hit by a train in the 40s. Others claimed she was a passenger who jumped. There was even A drunk theory from the town librarian that she was a Civil War widow waiting for a husband who died on the way home. Me? I think she's something else. It wasn't just that people disappeared, it was how. Like something was plucking them out of time, erasing them in a way that didn't feel natural. Every now and then, someone would report hearing a voice behind them right before it happened. Always soft, always close. Can you take me home? Sometimes it was followed by laughter. Not joyful, not human, just off. Like the sound of glass cracking in slow motion. Last year, a dashcam video surfaced online for about 2 hours before it got pulled. I managed to grab a copy. It showed a man driving late at night, road signs zipping past, the soft strobe of the crossing ahead. You can hear country music playing, then silence. The camera flickers. In the frame. Just for a second, she's there. Standing dead center in the road. The car jerks to a stop. The driver shouts. There's a blur of motion. Then the frame freezes on. A still image of the woman's face pressed against the rear window. Her eyes are black sockets. Her mouth is open, but not in a scream. It looks like she's mouthing something. I played it back 100 times. Slowed it down frame by frame. She's saying, I never got there. After that, the screen goes black. They found the car a week later, parked behind an abandoned grain mill in Flatonia. No damage, no sign of forced entry. The doors were locked. The keys were in the ignition. The driver's seatbelt was buckled. And the seat was empty. I drove out to the crossing myself last fall. I parked half a mile up and walked the rest, just to see it with my own eyes. It was quiet, too quiet. Even the crickets wouldn't sing. The wind died when I stepped onto the gravel. The signal lights blinked red, even though no train was coming. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. Then, from behind me, I heard footsteps. Light, barefoot. I didn't turn around. I got back in my truck and drove, and I didn't look in the rearview mirror until I'd passed into town. But my radio didn't work for the rest of the night. Just static. A woman's voice, whispering through the white noise, asking for a ride. The road out west has a different kind of silence, like the land knows how to keep secrets. And west of El Paso, beyond the reach of most phone signals and long past where the streetlights end, there's a tunnel nobody marks on a map. Old-timers mutter about it over whiskey and sun-bleached bars, but they never point. Truckers call it the Devil's Gullet. Locals just call it that place past mile marker 331. Officially, it doesn't exist. But if you're driving west on Highway 20 just before it runs dry into dust and nothingness, your GPS might flicker. Your music might stutter. And if it's close to 3 a.m., a turnoff might appear you've never seen before, a narrow road that dips low between rust-colored hills. Like a forgotten scar in the desert. No one remembers building the tunnel, and no record says it was ever part of the highway system. But it's there. Half a mile long, maybe less. Short enough to feel safe. Just long enough to make you start praying somewhere in the middle. Caleb was the kind of man who didn't scare easy. 27, ex-Army, ran long hauls for a freight company out of Abilene. He'd taken every route you could think of through Texas and beyond. He knew about storms in Amarillo, black ice in the Panhandle, dust that came like a wave in Lubbock and buried your tires like a biblical warning. But the road out west, he didn't know it like he thought. Not that night. He was heading back from a deadhead run to Las Cruces. No load, just a rattling trailer and a head full of country static. The job had gone fast, and he figured he could make it to Fort Stockton before catching a few hours of sleep. It was 2:47 a.m. when his GPS blinked out. Not a fade, not a slowdown, just gone, like someone yanked the signal out of the sky. Then came the smell, like rusted iron, blood-soaked sand. It filled his nostrils and caught in the back of his throat, sour and metallic. The kind of smell you remember from an old war wound. Or a slaughterhouse floor. Then he saw the turn-off. No signs. No reflective markers. Just a narrow asphalt bite carving into the desert. He'd driven that stretch before and never seen it. He should have kept driving. But something about the way the tunnel mouth opened ahead low and wide like a beast, waiting to yawn, drew him in. His headlights dimmed slightly as he turned down the blacktop. The trailer groaned behind him, and the smell grew stronger. As he neared the tunnel entrance, he slowed. There was no reason to. No other cars, no fog or weather. But his body told him to ease up. The opening looked smaller than it should have for a freight rig, but just big enough. As he entered, the walls swallowed the sound of the outside world. The drone of insects, the faint wind gone. Only the hum of his engine and the strange echo of his own breathing inside the cab. The tunnel's walls weren't stone or concrete. They looked like melted asphalt, dark and glistening, as if something had breathed fire through it decades ago. The headlights reflected weird, rippling patterns, like the walls weren't solid but breathing ever so slightly. Halfway in, the air turned cold. Freezing cold, like he'd rolled straight into winter. His windshield fogged despite the dry air. He turned on the defrost. And then the radio came alive, static first. Then a voice, faint like a whisper from a dream. It didn't speak in words, not at first, just heavy breathing, wet and ragged. Then came the whisper, "Stop the truck." He froze. The words came from the speakers, but the radio wasn't on. He turned the dial. Nothing. The screen was blank, but the voice remained low and close. "There's something behind you." He checked the mirror. Nothing. But then, something in the corner of the rearview movement, not in the road. In the sleeper cab behind him, a shape. Too dark to be shadow, too still to be imagined. He slammed the brakes. The truck groaned to a stop. The tunnel should have been short, just a few hundred yards, but ahead only darkness. No exit light. No other end. The tunnel seemed to go on forever now. He stared forward and saw something wrong with the headlight beams. They were getting shorter, not flickering, shrinking. Like the tunnel was closing in. He reached for the door. Locked. He hadn't locked it. The air turned thicker, heavy-like. It had weight. Breathing became harder. The smell now, it was blood, fresh and sharp. Copper and rot. Then came the whisper again. "She's in the back." His blood ran cold. There was no one in his truck when he left Las Cruces. But the voice wasn't lying. He could feel it now, presence. Something sitting behind him in the sleeper. Something that hadn't been there when he started. A coldness radiated from the space behind the curtain. He reached for his phone. No signal. The flashlight barely lit. He turned in his seat, heart pounding. The curtain fluttered, not from the truck. Not from wind. From breath. He stared. The curtain slowly pulled back. He doesn't remember screaming, but the sound bounced off the tunnel walls. Sharp and childlike, not a sound that should have come from a man like Caleb. He threw the rig into gear and floored it, tires shrieking in the silence, engine roaring against the cold. The tunnel didn't end. It stretched and twisted. The walls seemed to move now, not just ripple shift, like muscle contracting around him. He drove faster. The speedometer hit 65, then 70, then 90. But the end never came. His headlights only lit the road 10 feet ahead now, the rest swallowed. By a black that felt alive. And then the voice came louder. No longer in the radio, in his ears. Inside his skull. "She's already inside you." He felt the pressure then, something pushing into his chest. Like a second heartbeat, but colder. Slower. Something trying to sync with his breath, his thoughts. The truck jerked sideways. The steering wheel twisted in his hands, forcing him into the wall. He fought it, wrestled it, screamed again as cold fingers gripped the back of his neck. He reached back with one hand, struck air, then something softer than skin, like wet cloth, like rotted lace. Then it all went white. Caleb's truck was found 3 days later off an old access road near the Franklin Mountains. Its trailer half buried in sand, engine cold. No sign of Caleb, no blood, no prints. Just the truck, windows frosted from the inside, and claw marks on the steering wheel deep. Desperate grooves like someone tried to hold on as something pulled him away. The dash cam footage was recovered. Most of it was static. But for exactly 13 seconds the screen clears. It shows the tunnel. Only it doesn't look like a tunnel dot, it looks like a throat, and there's something crawling on the inside walls. Pale limbs, hands, mouths, whispering. Reaching dot, they say if you're near El Paso and you drive west late at night, your GPS might glitch. Your radio might fill with whispers. The air might taste like rust. Don't take the turn off. And if you do, don't stop dot, because once the tunnel opens, it remembers you, and it doesn't let go. The first time anyone mentioned the Beaumont detour to me, it was over a campfire outside of Jasper, after too many beers and just enough time for the pine smoke to settle low and slow into the night air. Some guy with a beard and a voice like a gravel truck said he had a cousin who disappeared out near Beaumont after taking a wrong turn off Highway 105. I didn't think much of it then. Texas has 1,000 lost roads and twice as many bad decisions. But a few weeks later, I was driving out to Sour Lake for a delivery, and I saw at the detour sign dot it wasn't a big orange construction deal with flashing lights. No cones, no reflective barriers. Just an old wooden post with a square metal sign bolted into it. It read Detour in plain white letters, faded, like it had been sitting there for a decade. But the thing that got me, what made my stomach twist up like barbed wire, was the fact that the road it pointed to didn't even look paved. Just gravel and dust, winding between thick pines that looked too close together, too shadowed for 2 in the afternoon. There wasn't any other traffic that day. Nothing behind me, nothing coming the other way. I pulled over and stared at that sign for a full minute. The GPS didn't register a road at all. In fact, when I zoomed in, that part of the map turned gray like a dead spot. I should have backed away. Should have ignored it like most folks probably did. But something about that sign gnawed at the edges of my brain. Like it was daring me dot, so I took the turn. The gravel crackled under my tires, spitting little stones into the underbrush. The trees swallowed the light fast, turning the world dimmer with every passing second. There was no signage after the turn though. Mile markers, no speed limit signs, no other cars. Just the sound of my engine and the rhythmic pop of gravel. I remember how quiet it got, not peaceful quiet. Not the kind that comes with Sunday mornings or sleepy towns. This was dead quiet. No birds, no insects. Just trees standing like crooked sentinels, watching. Every once in a while, I thought I saw something between them, something pale. Hunched, but every time I looked directly, it was gone dot about 15 minutes in. My radio started hissing. I hadn't turned it on, but it hissed anyway, the knob, twitching like it had a mind of its own. Then came the whispers. At first, they were faint, like static caught between channels. Then I started making out words. Turn back. Too late now. He's behind you. I checked the rearview mirror. Nothing. But my hands went slick on the steering wheel, and I swear to God, something shifted in the back seat. I didn't see anything, just the faint indent of leather sinking slightly, like weight had settled into it. But when I stared too long, I started seeing things in the glass. Not reflections, faces, pressed against the window like they were stuck in some other layer of the world. trying to scream their way into this one. The road didn't loop or split. It just kept going, winding deeper into the forest. My fuel gauge was dropping faster than it should have, and the air started to smell strange like hot copper and mildew. I rolled the window down a crack, hoping for fresh air, but all I got was a sharp whiff of rot. The smell of something old, buried too long. Finally digging its way up. Then I saw the tires. They were hanging from the trees, not thrown up there like some hillbilly basketball hoop. No, these were hung deliberately, ritualistically. Each tire suspended by a thick, rotting rope. Some were cracked and brittle. Others looked fresh, like they'd been stolen from a car just hours earlier. And each one was spinning, slow and steady, even though there wasn't a hint of wind. That's when I realized I wasn't the first one down this road. And I wouldn't be the last. I slammed the brakes and threw the truck in reverse, tires shrieking against the gravel. But the moment I did, I heard it something running. Not a deer, not a hog. Something with two legs, fast and heavy. I caught a glimpse in the mirror. A shape, too tall, too thin, moving wrong. It didn't run like a person. It loped, shoulders hunching unnaturally high, arms long and twitching like broken branches. I turned forward and floored it. The trees seemed to close in tighter. The gravel road narrowed. Branches scratched at the truck, shrieking across the metal like fingernails. I kept expecting to burst back onto the main road to see sunlight or asphalt or even another damn car, but it never came. No matter how far I drove, the woods held on. And then the road ended, just stopped. Dead in front of a tree thicker than a semi-trailer, roots splitting the ground in every direction. I slammed the brakes again, heart jackhammering, hands shaking. In the rear view, I saw the figure step onto the road behind me. It didn't walk, it glided. Its face was covered in something cloth, maybe, or just bone-white skin stretched tight. Like wax, I didn't look back again. I threw the door open and bolted. I didn't take my keys. I didn't grab my phone. I ran into the trees. The underbrush tore at me, thorns ripping my jeans, branches snapping against my face. But I didn't stop. Behind me, I heard the creak of the tires swinging, the whispering voices rising again, this time clearer. Walk into the woods. Stay with us. Join the others. I don't remember blacking out, just running. Then nothing. I woke up on the shoulder of Highway 105 near Beaumont. My face was bloodied. My boots were gone. My wallet was still in my back pocket, soaked through, but nothing else. No truck, no tire marks. Just the sound of passing cars and the distant buzz of cicadas. I reported it. No one believed me. The cops searched the area but found no detour. Sign, no gravel road, no truck. They chalked it up to heat stroke or drugs. Hell, maybe I would have believed them too, except for what I found a week later. I was driving home from the grocery store, sticking to the main road, not even looking at side paths anymore. But up ahead, I saw a pine tree on the edge of the Pia woods, and hanging from it, slowly spinning in the breeze, was a single tire. My tire. I knew it by the brand, the wear, the little notch from where I'd hit a nail in Lufkin. It was a warning. Or maybe a message. The Beaumont detour is still out there. It doesn't show up on every trip, doesn't catch every driver. But if you see that sign, if you're stupid or curious or just plain unlucky, don't take it. Or maybe do. Maybe it's already calling for you. The tires are waiting. And the thing in the woods, it never stops hunting. There's a stretch of road between Lufkin and Hemphill, far enough from the main arteries that GPS gets jittery and the pine trees lean in like they're eavesdropping. Locals call it the East Fork Spur, though it's not on most maps. No mile, Markers. No signs, just a 2-lane ribbon of cracked asphalt winding through forest so thick the sun barely filters down even at noon. It's the kind of place you don't end up unless you're lost, curious, or real unlucky. That's where they say the gas station appears. Just once in a while, always after dark. Always for the wrong person. Kyle ran a dispatch route for a small timber company out of Jasper. Nothing big, just hauling spare parts and paperwork from mill to mill in his rusted Chevy Silverado. Long hours, low pay, but he liked the quiet. The job gave him space to think. On that night, just after the September rains had turned the dirt to syrup and the frogs hollered like sirens in the ditches, Kyle took a wrong turn looking for Highway 103. His GPS kept blinking, recalculating, the voice stammering out fragmented directions before finally going silent. That's when he saw the glow. He didn't need gas. Didn't need a soda or a bathroom. But something about the soft yellow lights strung up like old Christmas bulbs pulled at him. The place looked like a postcard from the 1950s, a single bay. Gas station with whitewashed siding, a rusted roof, and pumps so ancient they still had the little flip numbers. A red soda machine stood by the double-glass door, humming faintly. There was no brand on the building. No sign. Just the word open flickering weakly in one dusty window. He figured maybe someone inside could give him directions. There was a payphone mounted to the wall beside the door, which struck him as odd, but he didn't think much of it at the time. He parked by the pumps and stepped out. The air smelled like ozone and old oil, sharp and electric, like a storm was lingering. Just out of sight. Crickets stopped chirping when he walked toward the door. Inside, the place was cleaner than it had any right to be. The floor was linoleum, yellowed and cracked, but swept. The coolers hummed in the back, though most were empty. One had rows of old glass bottled sodas, Nahi, RC Cola, Orange Crush. Stuff you didn't see anymore. A man stood behind the counter, reading a newspaper that looked faded enough to crumble. He didn't look up when Kyle came in. Kyle nodded at him. Evening. I think I took a wrong turn. My phone's acting up. The man slowly lowered his paper. He had sunken eyes and skin like old wax, stretched tight over his cheekbones. His name tag said, Harold, though the letters were smudged. East Fork Spur, the man said. A voice that sounded like it had traveled a long way to reach him. You ought to turn around. Yeah, I figured that, Kyle said with a nervous chuckle. But where does this road lead? Not where you want to go. Kyle glanced toward the back of the store. A payphone sat there too, another one. Same make. Same gray cord coiled up tight like a noose. I just need to call my boss. Let him know I'll be late getting back. Is your phone working? Harold didn't answer. Just nodded toward the one inside. Kyle walked back, picked up the receiver, and dialed. The line clicked. Then there was silence. Not dead silence worse. A kind of distant, underwater echo. Like his voice was traveling down a long pipe, distorted, delayed. Hey, it's Kyle. I got turned around. I'm somewhere near. Hemp Hill, I think. There's this gas station. He paused. Something brushed against his leg. He looked down. Nothing there. I'll try to find my way back soon. Just wanted to check in. No response. No click. Just his own voice repeating faintly, slower, like it was sinking into deep water. Kyle hung up, unsettled. Harold was gone when he turned around. The counter was empty. The back door was open, swinging on rusty hinges. Outside, the air was thicker, heavier. The woods had grown closer. He could feel it. The trees pressing in like curious strangers. He jogged outside. His truck was still there, but the lights were off. He didn't remember turning them off. The keys were still in the ignition. He climbed in, locked the doors, and twisted the key. Nothing. Not even a click. The sky looked wrong. Not cloudy, not stormy, just smeared. Like someone had taken an eraser to the stars. Even the moon was gone. He hit the headlights. They flickered, then died. Then came the static. The radio crackled. On by itself. Not music, just a low hiss, punctuated by sharp bursts of feedback. Then a voice. It wasn't his own, but it was speaking in his tone. There's no road back. Kyle punched the power button. The radio didn't respond. There's no road. Back, it said again. Only in. He shoved open the door, heart pounding, and sprinted back toward the store. But it wasn't there. The station was gone. Just a patch of gravel. No pumps, no soda machine. Only the payphone remained, hanging. From a cracked post like an ornament, he ran into the woods, not knowing what else to do. His flashlight barely cut through the darkness, and the trees were wrongsome twisted, others leaning unnaturally, their trunks flaking like old bark peeling from bone. He tripped more than once, heard whispering behind him. Voices low and echoing, his name. Not shouted. Breath dot when he finally stopped, panting and drenched in sweat, he turned and found the gas station again. Right there in the trees, the lights were back on. The pumps glowed faintly. The red soda machine was humming. He walked up to it, hand trembling, and pressed one of the buttons. It clunked. A bottle rolled out. He picked it up dusty, sealed. Cold. The label read, "You never left." He dropped it. It shattered, but there was no liquid inside. Only dust, Kyle screamed. But it didn't sound like his voice anymore. Weeks later, a park ranger named Lenora Carver found a Chevy Silverado rusting beside the road. Tires flat, doors locked. Inside was a red soda bottle, still sealed. No fingerprints. No sign of anyone. She'd worked that region for 20 years. Knew every stretch of road. Every hollow and hunting trail. There's never been a gas station out there, she told the sheriff. Not once. But when she listened to the CB that night, Channel 19 Dead for Years clicked on. A voice came through. Warbled. Hollow. Need. Directions, I think I'm lost. Just saw a gas station. Red soda machine. Then silence, except for the sound of fizzing, like a bottle opening in the dark. Locals always whispered about Crybaby Bridge off FM 2004, like it was a childhood dare that somehow grew fangs in adulthood. A thin stretch of concrete arching over some shallow trickle of black water near Lake Jackson, Texas. You wouldn't think twice about it if you didn't know the stories. But everyone who lived within 50 miles knew. The kids whispered about the baby's cries when they passed it on school buses. Parents warned their teenagers not to stop, not even to piss. Truckers wouldn't take that stretch if they could help it. And every now and then, maybe once a year, maybe twice, someone stopped anyway. That's when it got quiet. No birds, no bugs. Just red tail lights humming in the dark, left blinking with no one behind the wheel. They say the water under. The bridge is only a few feet deep, but it drinks people like it's bottomless. On the evening of August 3rd, Evelyn Hart didn't believe in any of that. She was a practical woman, 39 years old, single, working night shifts as a hospice nurse in Angleton. She'd lived long enough to see real death, the kind that smells like rotting onions and comes with moans that stay in your ears. Ghost stories? That was just what people told themselves to explain the ugly things they couldn't face in the daylight. She laughed when her coworker warned her not to take FM 2004 that night. "You'll hear the baby," the woman had said, real serious. "And when you do, don't look in your rear view." Evelyn took FM 2004 anyway. It was faster. And she didn't believe in haunted bridges. The road was mostly empty that night. Just her, the occasional pair of headlights in the opposite lane, and the soft hum of a low FM radio station playing Patsy Cline under static. The sky was a thick, purple-black overcast, the kind that pressed down on you like a heavy blanket, and the air outside was dead still. The bridge came into view around 11:52 p.m., a slumped old structure that barely deserved to be called a bridge, spanning maybe 15 feet of trickling black water. She wouldn't have noticed it if the car hadn't suddenly gone quiet. Not the engine, that was still on, but the radio. 1 second it was humming softly, the next it just ... stop ... then came the crying ... It wasn't loud at first. Just a soft whimper, the way a newborn sounds when it's trying to get attention, not screaming yet but building up to it. Evelyn looked at the radio, then at the passenger seat. She turned down the air conditioning, thinking maybe it was the vents. The crying got louder, and this time it came from behind her. Back seat. She checked the mirror. Nothing. Just the empty seat, clean and dark, save for the faint reflection of her own confused face. She reached back quickly, flicked on the dome light. Nothing. The crying stopped. The hair on her arms prickled up. Evelyn slowed the car. She told herself she was being stupid. Stress? Fatigue? Maybe. The radio was interfering with something. She reached to turn it off, but the knob didn't respond. Static crackled. Then a breathy voice whispered through the speakers. Down here. She slammed the brakes. The car skidded to a stop just before the bridge. Her hands trembled on the wheel. That voice, it had sounded too close. Not broadcast. Not artificial. Like it had been whispered directly into her ear. She should have driven. She should have hit the gas and never looked back. But something made her get out. Maybe it was that strange pull some people talk about when they say they feel called to something. Maybe it was the nurse in her, that instinct to check on a crying baby, even when it doesn't make sense. She stepped out into the still, humid air. Crickets weren't chirping. No frogs, no wind. Just that trickle of unseen water under the bridge and the quiet ticking of her engine cooling. The red glow of her taillights bathed the trees and back in a weak, pulsing light. She walked slowly to the side of the bridge and peered down. No baby. Just water, reflecting nothing. Then came another cry, louder, more desperate. From beneath. She stepped closer, leaning over the guardrail. Hello? She called. Is someone there? The crying turned into a wet gurgle. Then silence. She turned to go back to the car. That's when she saw the passenger door was open. She hadn't left it open. Her headlights dimmed, then flared again. The car's dome light clicked on and stayed on. She stared at it, heart thudding so hard it hurt her ears. Something was sitting in the passenger seat, small, wrapped in something white. Rocking slightly, she took one step toward it, and it turned its head. It didn't have a face, just a smooth, soft, wet thing like clay that hadn't fully formed. A wide slit where a mouth should be stretched into a soundless scream. Her throat clamped shut. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. She watched it reach for the steering wheel with long, soft fingers that looked boneless. Then her headlights shut off. The world went dark. The only thing left were her taillights, pulsing. The next morning, a county maintenance worker found the car still running, parked with the driver's door open and both front seats empty. The radio was playing white noise. The dome light blinking steadily like a heartbeat. No one ever found. Evelyn. The water under the bridge was checked. Nothing. Dogs were brought out. They whimpered and refused to go near it. One pissed itself. That night, at exactly midnight, a baby cried again under the bridge. Two teens in a black Tacoma stopped to check. Now, their truck's still out there. Engine cold. Rear lights pulsing. Doors wide open. And every night since, the crying comes a little earlier. Sometimes at 11:45. Sometimes 11:30. Sometimes right after dusk. People say the baby's getting stronger. Others say it was never a baby at all. The first time Santiago Ruiz heard about Devil's Bend, he was sitting in the break room of the Laredo Postal Sorting Center, sipping bitter vending machine coffee and trying not to fall asleep on his last hour of the graveyard shift. The old janitor, Hector, whose face looked like cracked leather and hands like they'd wrung the life out of dirt, was telling a story to a young temp who looked too fresh-faced to last another week. "It's out past Loop 20, Hector said, not looking at Santiago but talking loud enough for the whole room. "Highway 83 meets it near the brush line. Ain't even marked on most GPS apps. You'll know when you hit it, though. The road bends sharp, but the air gets weird. Feels like you're underwater. And then everything just stops. Sound, wind, even your own breath. Gone." The temp chuckled nervously, but Hector didn't. People stop there. They think something's wrong. Then they get out of the car. Then they don't come back. That was 2 nights before Santiago drove it himself. He hadn't planned to. He'd just gotten off shift, too wired to sleep and too tired to think straight. It was close to 4 in the morning, and the night had been thick and hot with the kind of humidity that makes your skin crawl. He took a long route home, windows down, the air thick with that desert rot smell, cactus flowers and something a little sour like wet dust. His Honda's radio had been acting up lately, flickering static between every station, but it was still better than silence. Until a WASN single quotes T dot just north of Laredo on a 2-lane stretch that shouldn't have been. Familiar but somehow was, the static cut out completely. Not a fade. Not a hiss. Just dead silence. Santiago frowned and turned the knob, flipping between frequencies. Nothing. Not even the low hum of dead air. Just nothing. He muttered a curse, then noticed something else. The road had started to curve unnaturally, the kind of bend that creeps up too slow to notice at first, but long enough you feel like your car's leaning sideways. His tires made no sound on the pavement. The wind was gone. The hum of the engine was still there. He could feel it vibrating, but he couldn't hear it. Even his breath, labored from the heat, made no sound in his own ears. It was like someone had pressed mute on the whole world. He slowed down. His headlights cut through a thick band of trees pressing in too close for South Texas. The curve kept going, and the darkness between the trees looked wrong like ink instead of shadow. And then, ahead of him on the road, he saw it, a smear. Jet black, wide and strange, like oil, but too dry for that. It stretched across both lanes, not a spill but something permanent. It shimmered slightly under the headlights, and something in Santiago's chest seized. His brain screamed, "Don't stop," but his hands were already pulling the wheel, easing the car to the shoulder. When the engine cut off, there was no tick of cooling metal, no buzz of cicadas, no frogs croaking in the brush, just that awful, pressure-heavy. Nothing. He opened the door and stepped out, boots crunching into gravel, but no sound reached his ears. The silence was so deep it had weight, like it lived there. He walked toward the black smear. As he got closer, the air grew thicker, like it was pushing back. His eyes started to burn. His nose dripped. He felt like he was walking into something alive. The smear wasn't oil. It wasn't paint. It was something darker than either, something that didn't belong to the world he knew. It rippled when he got near it, just slightly, like something had noticed him. Then he heard it not with his ears, but deep in his bones. You stopped. It wasn't a voice. It was a presence, heavy, cold, ancient. It knew him. It was him. He staggered back, heart thudding like a hammer. Though it made no sound, he turned to run to the car. But the car was gone, not down the road. Not wrecked. Not stolen, just no longer there. The gravel shoulder stretched out empty behind him. There were no tire tracks. No smell of gas or oil. His footprints were the only sign of him ever being there, and the smear had widened. He ran. Or tried, but every step felt like dragging through tar. The trees around the bend blurred into something impossible like faces in the wood, watching with blank eyes. The air grew colder and heavier until he dropped to his knees, and then it ended. Morning came. Traffic resumed, and there, just on the outside edge of the bend, highway workers laid down cones around the black smear, which had returned. Same shape, same spot. One man nudged it with a boot and found his toe burning for an hour after. They didn't know where it came from. No one did. No oil company claimed a spill. No test sample matched any known substance. It wasn't flammable, wasn't corrosive, but it was always there after someone went missing. Every few months, another car would be found parked just off the bend, empty, clean, keys still in the ignition. Engine off, no footprints, no trail. Locals stopped taking that road after midnight. Even the police had a rule: circle the long way around or wait until morning, and the smear never moved. It never grew, but sometimes, just sometimes, it rippled, as if something underneath it was breathing. They called it Devil's Bend because that's what Hector always said it was. A place where the world ends and something older begins. And Santiago Ruiz? He was never seen again, but every few weeks, just before the smear appears again, someone driving that curve late at night says they see him, standing at the edge of the road, mouth open in a scream they can't hear, eyes wide with something deeper than fear. They drive past. They never stop, because everyone in Laredo knows you don't stop at Devil's Bend. Not if you want to come back whole, and you sure as hell don't walk toward the silence. They say if you're driving westbound on I-20 just after dusk, somewhere between Tyler and the exit for Hideaway, there's a stretch of road where headlights dim for no reason. Not all at once, but like they've been soaked in old fog. You'll see your beams reach out strong and wide, then suddenly shrink, narrow, like they're retreating from something ahead. That's the mile folks whisper about in trucker bars and late-night AM radio call-ins, the same mile where drivers talk. About the hitchhiker. Not just any hitchhiker, but the one who walks backward. People first started noticing him around the summer of 2006, when a trucker named Delred Harmon pulled into a diner outside Canton with his face pale as marble and his voice shaking, like he'd swallowed a blender full of ice. Said he saw a man walking backward on the shoulder thumb out, head turned not toward him but toward the tree line. Not a glance at traffic. Just walking that way, slow and steady, like he was being reeled back in. Red didn't stop. But he looked in his mirror as he passed and swore he saw the man's feet weren't quite touching the pavement. Said it looked like he was gliding an inch above the blacktop. Red died in his sleep 3 nights later. His wife found the cab of his parked rig running, driver's door wide open, his boots still on the mat. No sign of trauma. But every radio station in a 50-mile radius was still blaring in his truck. Every single one. Even the ones that had gone off the air years ago. After that, it was mostly rumors, pieces. A sheriff's deputy found a 2007 Camry idling off the shoulder with no driver inside. All the doors locked from the inside. The deputy cracked the window to unlock it and found the driver's seat belt buckled tight, but no one in it. Only thing in the passenger seat was a fresh imprint, like someone had just gotten out. He didn't report that part, but I know, because he told me in a bar in Lindale after too many whiskeys and a look on his face, like he'd been staring down a coffin and forgot how to blink. You don't get full stories out here. You get fragments. Pieces of people who stop talking halfway through. Folks who stare into their drinks like they're listening to something behind the glass. But I got a full story once. It came from a woman named Natalie who stopped one night. because she thought she was helping someone. That's how they get you. You see him walking backward, arm out, thumb raised like a flag of surrender. Most people drive by with a chill in their chest and a prayer on their tongue. But Natalie had been raised in a church that said kindness is armor. That good deeds build protection. That if someone needs you, God expects you to answer. It was just after 9 p.m. Late August, the sun a red smudge on the western sky. Her gas light had come on and she was starting to panic. Not many stations that far out. She crested a small rise and saw him man walking backward on the shoulder, facing the trees. She told me the moment she passed, her headlights flickered, and her check engine light blinked once, then off. She slowed. Didn't mean to, she said. Her foot just sort of eased off the pedal. The man's thumb stayed raised, unmoving. He was lean, wore a dusty black hoodie even though the night was hot. Baggy jeans. His face, she said, looked off, like someone had painted features on wax but forgot to let them set. The mouth too wide. The nose soft-edged, like a photo blurred by motion. She pulled over, and he stopped walking. Just stood there, back to her. Thumb still out. She leaned over and opened the passenger door. "You need a ride?" She called. He didn't answer. But the door slammed shut on its own. She flinched and looked over, and there he was. Sitting beside her, she said she hadn't seen him move. Didn't hear the seat creak. 1 second the seat was empty, the next he was there, still facing away, staring at the window, unmoving. Hands folded in his lap. She tried to say something, but the words died in her throat. Her fingers gripped the wheel so tight her knuckles hurt. She eased back onto the highway, trying not to look at him. She told me he smelled like rust and wet dirt, like something pulled from under an old barn floor. "What's your name?" she finally asked. He didn't answer, but the radio came on. All. By itself, an old station. Static heavy, but playing something strange. Not music. Just ... whispering. Low. Almost chanting. She said she couldn't understand the words, but they made her skin crawl. Like hearing your own name in a language you don't speak. Then the lights in her dashboard blinked out. Her phone died. Her headlights dimmed. She was still moving, but the world around her looked like it had been drained of color. He finally spoke, but not in words. She said his mouth opened, but the voice didn't come from him. It came from the back seat, from right behind her head. "Turn here," it said. There was no turn. Just trees and dark brush. "Turn," it said again. She didn't. She kept driving. The voice changed. Became angry. Not loud, still calm, but the kind of calm that fills morgues and padded rooms. She felt her hands wanting to turn the wheel, even though her brain screamed no. Her muscles locked up, like her own body was working against her. She prayed. She said she started yelling verses, trying to remember the ones her grandmother taught. The passenger seat groaned. She glanced. He was gone. She swerved, skidded off the shoulder, and slammed the brakes. The car spun, came to a halt in a ditch. No damage, but her heart was thundering. She looked around at no one, but in the seat beside her purse had been opened. Not rummaged, just opened. And inside it, a folded photo that wasn't hers. A picture of her, as a child, holding her mother's hand. She hadn't seen that picture in years. Thought it was lost when the house burned. She picked it up. On the back, someone had written in smudged red ink, "You already stopped once. You'll stop again." She never drove that highway again. She moved to Arizona within the year. I asked her why. She told me, of all people. She said I had the look of someone who'd seen him too. And maybe I have. Sometimes I take that route late at night, engine humming, tires whispering across the pavement like secrets. I keep my eyes straight, never scan the shoulders. But once, just once, I saw something. In the rear view, a man walking backward on the white line, his thumb raised dot and my lights dimmed. The road that winds through the Texas hill country doesn't have a name on any map worth trusting. It peels off Ranch Road 965 like a scar, just past a rusted cattle guard where the land begins to buckle into those old limestone hills. Locals call it the Mirror Mile, though most won't say why unless they've been drinking. And even then, they'll cut their story short, glancing over their shoulders like they expect to see someone standing behind them, or something. It's a narrow stretch, hardly more than a lane and a half wide, hemmed in by thick mesquite and cedar brush that leans in too close, whispering in the wind even when there isn't any. Jared found it by mistake. He wasn't from around there, just a software rep from Austin who thought he'd take a scenic route back from Fredericksburg after a client meeting and a 2-beer lunch. His GPS had been glitching all day, rerouting him every few miles, but it hadn't really mattered until that turn. The map blinked, reloaded, and suddenly there it was, a faster route home, supposedly through the green hills and amber pastures. He'd taken it without a second thought, sipping warm root beer and humming along to a forgotten Foo Fighters song. The first thing he noticed was the quiet, the kind of quiet that made your ears ring. No cicadas, no wind in the grass, not even the low whine of tires on pavement, just the faint hum of the engine and the odd rhythm of his own breathing. Then his headlights bent, not like a curve in the road, more like they hit something soft and invisible and swerved to the side like water trickling over glass. It happened so fast he thought maybe he was tired, maybe his eyes were dry. He rubbed them, blinked hard, kept going. Then it happened again. The beams twisted upward, refracted off something that wasn't there, and flared into the trees like a spotlight. He slowed the car, heart thumping now, a flicker of unease tapping at the base of his spine. He glanced in the rearview mirror. Just the empty road behind him, pinched between leaning trees. But then he saw her, his fiancée, Jeanne. She died 3 years ago. Suicide, bathtub, the whole miserable, silent aftermath. And yet there she was, in the mirror. Not just a face, her whole figure, sitting in the back seat like she'd never left. Pale, hair wet, dressed in that old sweater she used to wear when they went camping. She was looking at him, head slightly tilted, lips parted like she was about to say something. He spun around. The back seat was empty. When he looked back at the mirror, she was still there. And this time, she smiled. His foot slipped on the brake. The car jerked forward, tires skidding a little on the gravel shoulder. The mirror cracked, just a thin fracture like a hairline across a windshield. But it spread fast, webbing across the glass until the image of June was broken into a dozen pieces and still smiling in each one. He didn't turn around again. He just kept driving. The trees grew thicker, bending toward the car like they wanted to wrap it up. The headlights kept refracting, bouncing off patches of fog that weren't fog, bending in sharp, unnatural angles that made shadows twist and crawl across the dashboard. His radio started to hiss, then warble, picking up strange voices speaking in tones that weren't language. At least not one Jared knew. Every time he reached for the dial, the voices got louder, closer, until it felt like they were right behind his ears, whispering through his skull. Then he saw them. On the road ahead, just at the edge of the headlights, were people, figures, some walking, some standing still, all facing away from him. They looked familiar, too familiar. One had the slouched shoulders and ratty leather jacket of his old college roommate who'd odd in 2016. Another had the limp gait and curly blonde hair of his younger sister lost in a car crash on I-35 when she was 19. He wanted to stop. Every bone in his body screamed to stop. But something else, deeper, darker, told him not to. Something primal, Survival, maybe, or fear, but the car was already slowing. Not because he was braking, but because something was pulling it back, like the road itself had turned to molasses. Like time was thickening around him, he floored the gas. The engine roared, but the car barely crawled. And then he saw himself, 30 feet ahead, walking down the center line of the road was Jared. Same jeans, same blue button-down, same scuffed boots. But the way the figure moved, it wasn't right. Too fluid, too graceful, like a puppet on invisible strings. The face turned back slowly, and the reflection of Jared's own face in the windshield did not match the expression in the mirror. The eyes were too wide, the smile too sharp, like it knew something he didn't. Jared swerved off the road. The car plowed through a ditch and came to a jarring stop in a cluster of rocks and twisted mesquite. Dust filled the air. The radio cut off. Silence returned except for the rhythmic thudding of his heart and the soft, deliberate crunch of footsteps on gravel. Getting closer, he slammed the car into reverse, tires spinning in the dirt. No traction. The figure, his double, was moving toward the driver's side door now, slow. And sure, like it had all the time in the world. Its mouth opened, and Jared could see that its teeth were not right. Too many, too sharp, too hungry. The door handle jiggled. Jared screamed. He reached across the seat, popped a glove box, and grabbed the old tire iron he kept there for emergencies. This wasn't the kind of emergency he'd imagined, but it'd have to do. The moment the handle clicked open, he slammed the iron into the door. Metal thudded. The door creaked, then swung back, and there was no one there. Just mist. Just branches moving like arms. He bolted out the passenger side into the trees. Ran blind through cedar scrub, catching thorns on his sleeves, sweat pouring into his eyes. Behind him, the road had vanished. No engine sounds. No car. Just the shuffle of footsteps and a voice that sounded like his mother calling from the dark. He doesn't remember collapsing, but that's where the rancher found him. At sunrise. Curled in a dry creek bed, eyes wide open, pupils blown. Jared didn't speak for weeks. When he did, he only said one thing over and over. I saw myself, and he smiled back. They tried to get him to point out where it happened, but he couldn't, or wouldn't. The GPS was blank. The car was never recovered, and no one else could find the road again, except sometimes people still do. A family of 4 driving from Llano to Kerrville vanished in 2019. Their dashcam footage ended with a flicker of strange light and a warped reflection in the windshield. A college kid on a motorcycle came back babbling about seeing his twin riding beside him in the dark. An old man from Mason walked 5 miles home barefoot and bleeding, claiming he'd outrun himself. And always, the story is the same. 1 mile. 1 mile where the road bends your headlights, bends your mind, and makes mirrors lie. Because sometimes what you see isn't you. And sometimes it is, but it's already too late. In the desert stretch between Marfa and Alpine, where the land turns to tan dust and the sun bleeds into everything like an infection, there's a curve just past a dried-out creek bed that locals don't like to talk about. Most folks driving that patch of Highway 90, especially at night, keep their eyes straight, their foot steady and their hands glued to the wheel, no matter what catches in their peripheral vision. But sometimes the thing that catches isn't a shadow, isn't a trick of the light or the mind, and it isn't something you can ignore. That stretch of road is long and lonesome, the kind of stretch where the air feels too still and the silence has weight. Ranch fences run forever along both sides, rotting and half buried in dust, broken in places where even barbed wire gave up holding anything back. There's a patch of yucca on the left, always lit strangely, like it's got its own moon. And That's where the jackrabbit waits. They call it the jackrabbit that watched, and if you've seen it, you never forget the feeling. You'll be driving sometime between dusk and the dead of night, maybe a little tired, maybe just zoned out in the monotony of the desert, and then there it is, sitting by the shoulder, facing the road. Just sitting. It doesn't twitch. Doesn't hop away, just stares. Too big to be real. Taller than your knee if you stood beside it, maybe even waist high. Ears like spears, eyes too round, too human in the way they look at you. And if you see it blink, just once you're done. There are stories. Like the one about Junior Vasquez, who worked for the radio station in Alpine and liked to drive the desert at night, smoking cigarettes and listening to old Tejano tapes his uncle made back in the 70s. Junior was the kind of guy who didn't believe in much. Ghosts, spirits, weird desert stuff, he laughed it off. His girlfriend said he liked chasing myths, so he could laugh louder when they turned out to be nothing. He drove out one September night chasing a thunderstorm. Wanted to get some pictures of lightning forks over the plains, maybe capture something rare. But he never made it to Marfa. The troopers found his car 2 days later, parked neat on the shoulder, keys in the ignition, camera bag in the front seat. Doors locked from the inside, no sign of struggle. No Junior. They say the footage from his dashboard cam, what little wasn't static, showed him slowing down near that stretch. The last clear frame? A huge jackrabbit sitting on the roadside, unmoving, its eyes reflecting the headlights like gold coins. He never came home. Then there was Penny Gordon, a tourist from Minnesota. She flew into El Paso and rented a car to tour the weird towns and take desert photos. Her last call was to her husband, somewhere near Marfa, telling him the sunset was hauntingly beautiful and that she'd be in Alpine by 9. But her GPS never updated after 8:07 p.m. Her rental was found 3 weeks later, gas tank full, door ajar, purse on the seat. Her phone was dead and full of dust, but one picture had uploaded to the cloud. It was blurry, taken from the driver's seat. Just a sliver of the road, the reddish glow of the setting sun, and something on the shoulder. Something tall. Ears like daggers. Facing the car. The deputy who reviewed the file said it made him nauseous just looking at it. Like the shape in the photo was wrong, like it pushed against the edges of the lens. Didn't fit the frame. A few months later, a pair of college boys from Lubbock tried to prank the local sheriff's office. They dressed up a big fake rabbit, filmed themselves driving past it, and sent the clip to a paranormal podcast claiming it was real. They laughed their asses off for a week until one of them didn't show up for his midterms. Then the other stopped answering calls. Both were found in their dorm room, seated on their beds, eyes wide open. Dead. No trauma, no drugs, no sign of violence. But their roommates said they kept hearing whispering behind the locked door for hours before anyone found the bodies. Whispering that didn't stop until someone finally turned the knob. That's the thing people don't mention enough, the whispering. They say if you slow down, if you dare roll your window down, you'll hear something. Something like soft murmuring in a language that doesn't belong to this place. Some say it sounds like a child reciting names. Others say it's like the hum of a radio left on in an empty room. One woman who survived barely said she didn't hear anything, but her dog started yelping and clawing at the back window like it was trying to escape the car. She didn't even see the jackrabbit, she said, just felt it. Like it was there, behind the glass, breathing on her neck. She crashed into a mesquite tree, walked 3 miles barefoot, bleeding from the nose, never drove again. Nobody knows what it is. Some say it's a skinwalker. Others think it's a leftover ghost from some ancient wrong, a curse born from bones buried too long ago to matter now. But whatever it is, it waits, and it watches. And if it blinks, if you see that one slow, deliberate blink, you'll never reach where you were going. People who stop vanish. People who stare too long start forgetting things. First little things, names, addresses, what year it is. Then bigger pieces. One man showed up in Marfa, claiming to be from 1952. Thought Eisenhower was still president and couldn't figure out how his own hands had so many liver spots. He didn't even remember stopping the car, just remembered eyes. Big, wet gold. Eyes. There's a local rule, written in no books but passed down in gas stations and diners. If you're driving between Marfa and Alpine and the desert starts to feel too still, too empty, and your headlights catch a tall shape on the shoulder keep, driving. Don't slow, don't look directly. And for the love of everything, don't stop, because the rabbit doesn't hop. It doesn't move until it blinks, and then you're gone. It's not on any new map. No GPS recognizes it. But they say if you're coming out of Eden just after sunset, and if your mind's not quite right, maybe drunk, maybe tired, maybe just wandering, you might see the old sign leaning out of the brush like something half buried in a shallow grave. It doesn't look like much. Rusted green aluminum with fading white numbers, almost unreadable. But if you squint against the last red of the sky, you can still make them out. 666. Route 666. Though they stripped the name years ago, paved it over, and redrew every chart. Still, it lingers like cancer under scar tissue. Clayton Everly wasn't supposed to be in Eden. He was supposed to be 200 miles west, home in Big Spring, sleeping off the third shift at the plant. But a last-minute pickup had him driving back roads with a truck full of engine valves, barely legal on weight, and overheating in the July dusk. His GPS had rerouted him twice already, and he was swearing under his breath when he saw it. That crook sign just peeking through mesquite like a whisper. He didn't even remember turning the wheel, not really. But his tires crunched onto gravel like they'd been waiting for it, and the road dipped down like a throat swallowing him whole. Right away, something felt off. The pavement looked newer than it should have, like it had been laid by someone who remembered the old way. Roads used to feel smooth, but with just enough ripple to keep your hands on the wheel. The white lines were pristine, too perfect, like they'd been painted yesterday. But there were no road crews, no reflectors, no mile markers, no anything really. Just the curve of road swallowed up in the trees ahead and the eerie sense of stillness. About 5 minutes in, his phone went dead. Not low battery, just blank screen, like someone had reached through the tower signals and pulled the plug. His radio followed. First came static, then a low whine, like something winding up. Then came the voices. They weren't clear at first, just whispers curling around his ears like breath on glass. Then one broke through, a woman's voice, distant and broken. "Turn around, please, turn around." He blinked hard, glanced at the back seat through the rear view, but saw only the shadows shifting in the cab. A few seconds later, another voice, deeper, cracked and full of gravel. "Keep going. You're almost through." Then silence. He should have stopped. Any sane man would have stopped. But Clayton kept his foot on the gas, even as the air outside seemed to get thicker, the way it does before a tornado drops. The windshield began to fog up from the inside, though the AC was blowing full blast. He wiped it with his sleeve, and when he looked out again, the trees were different. They were twisted now. Not just growing, but writhing branches coiled. Like broken fingers, leaves twitching as if stirred by something that wasn't wind. Every so often, he thought he saw a face pale and human shape peeking between trunks, watching him pass, mouths moving in slow, mournful syllables. But every time he turned to look, they were gone. That's when he noticed the clock on the dash. It was 7:38 when he turned onto the road. Now it said 3:41 a.m., and yet the sun hadn't moved, still hanging just under the horizon like it couldn't make up its mind. He checked his wristwatch 7:38. He checked the truck's onboard system 3:41. And then he looked in the rear view and saw himself, but it wasn't himself. Not really. The man in the mirror was older. His hair peppered with gray, skin pale and sagging like clay left in the sun, his eyes sunken as if he hadn't slept in years. Clayton slammed the brakes, heart hammering. The truck skidded to a stop, and for a long second, there was only the sound of the engine ticking and the steady pound of his pulse in his ears. He climbed out, boots crunching on gravel that felt too soft. It was darker now somehow. Not night, but a dimness that crept in like mold. The trees were closer than before, pressing in. He walked around to the back of the truck, half thinking the road had turned on itself, folded like origami. But it was still there, winding forward, unchanged, unbroken. When he turned back, the truck was different. The paint was peeling, tires sagging like they'd been left in a junkyard for years. The cab was empty, dust coating the windows from the inside. A sick dread spread through his chest like spilled oil. He fumbled for the door and climbed back in, coughing on stale air that tasted of rust and mildew. He gripped the wheel, closed his eyes, and floored it. The truck roared like an animal shaking off sleep and surged forward. The road narrowed. Trees blurred past like teeth in a throat, and the voices came again. This time not behind him, but inside him, whispers crawling down his spine, whispering regrets, secrets, things he never told a soul. You shouldn't have hit her. She was still alive when you buried her. You always knew you'd end up here. He screamed and kept going. The road twisted and split and twisted again. At one point, he swore it looped over itself like a Mobius strip he passed a burnt-out car. Then again, then a third time, each more decayed. Inside the last one, he saw something slumped behind the wheel. Himself, maybe. Or what he could become. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the trees broke. Light poured through. Real sunlight. Birds chirped. The road opened onto a wide, grassy plain. And there, like nothing happened, was Highway 83. Clayton pulled over, heart still jackhammering, hands trembling. He checked the dash clock 7:42. Barely 4 minutes passed. He looked in the rear view. His face, just his face. No gray, no age. The truck was clean again. Full tank. Music played softly from the radio, some old country tune he didn't recognize, but felt like he should. He looked back. No road, no sign. Just prairie. The old route was gone. They say nobody makes it all the way through. Maybe Clayton didn't either. Maybe a piece of him is still out there aging, whispering, screaming. They say if you see the sign and you take the road, it shows you things. Takes things. Time, memory, guilt. It holds them, collects them like bones in the dirt. Most don't come back. And those that do, they're never quite the same dot, so if you ever find yourself just south of Eden and the sky looks wrong, and your radio goes quiet, and your GPS spins like it's lost its mind, don't stop. Don't turn. And for God's sake, if you see a sign marked 666 leaning out of the brush, pretend you never did. Because some roads weren't meant to be driven. Some roads remember you. The first time I saw the house, I was headed south on FM 2100, just outside Huffman, on my way back from a delivery run to Dayton. It was around 2:15 a.m., fog riding low on the asphalt like spilled smoke, the pine trees standing black and rigid, against a sky that looked too close, too thick with clouds to be normal. My CB crackled with static, which wasn't unusual. Not out in those rural back roads. But there was something about it that night, like a whisper buried under the snowstorm of noise. I turned the knob, fiddled with the antenna switch, but it didn't stop. That's when I saw a dot. It wasn't there, and then it was an old wooden house off the shoulder. No mailbox, no driveway, no signs it had ever belonged to the land. It looked sagged in places, like something that had been pulled up from the earth by invisible hands. The boards were the color of wet ash, the windows dark holes. It was maybe 20 yards from the road, standing crooked in a clearing that shouldn't have been there. I slowed the truck, blinked twice, rubbed my eyes. Huffman didn't have houses like that. Not that old, not that decayed. I passed it in seconds, my headlights brushing the porch. Something moved behind the front window, just a flicker, a shape. I looked in the rear view, nothing but the fog chasing my taillights. Then came the static again, louder this time. My radio wasn't just crackling. It was speaking, kind of a rhythm, like someone breathing through gritted teeth. I reached over to kill the power, but it cut itself off before I touched it. Dead silent. Then my phone chirped and buzzed, screen white, then black. Hot in my hand like it'd been microwaved. I slowed to a crawl and thought about turning around. Maybe the house was some prop or an art installation. Maybe I was overtired. I had been driving since noon, running on caffeine and beef jerky. But I couldn't shake the image of that sagging porch or the shadow in the window. I thought maybe I'd just drive back, take a quick look, prove it wasn't there. Maybe I'd imagined it. Hell, I even laughed a little dot, so I turned around. The road was dead empty, no lights, no cars. I rolled slow, headlights cutting through the mist like dull knives. And then, there it was again, but closer, close to the road. Maybe 10 yards now, right at the tree line. I slammed the brakes and sat there staring at it. I hadn't heard anything move. No scraping, no shifting. But it had moved. I tried to reverse, but the gear shift wouldn't budge. My hands felt heavy, fingers tingling. My breath steamed the glass even though the AC was on. Then the static returned this time from every speaker in the truck, even the ones that hadn't worked in years. It wasn't just white noise now. There was a voice inside it, saying something again and again, like a chant buried beneath layers of feedback. Come inside. I rolled up the window even though it was already shut. The air had turned thick like soup, like something was hanging in it. My chest was tight, skin DMP. I blinked, looked again. The house was even closer now. On the shoulder, porch nearly brushing my passenger mirror. I hadn't seen it move. I hadn't even seen the trees part. It had just shifted, slid closer like a pawn across a chessboard. The voice whispered again, clearer now. Come inside. My phone lit up, just for a moment, a white screen. Then a red symbol appeared, something like a house drawn by a child, crooked and shaking, like it had been scratched into the screen with a nail. Then it burst into black, not off dead. It melted right there in my palm. The plastic oozed like wax. I reached for the door handle, but my fingers wouldn't close. They trembled like they weren't mine. My mouth went dry. My body itched like I'd rolled through fiberglass. The truck lights flickered, then died. Then the engine stalled. I was left in the dark with the fog creeping in like a living thing. Something tapped my rear window, soft at first. Then again, louder, 3 taps. Like knuckles. I turned to look. Nothing. But the back seat felt heavier. I don't know how else to explain it. Like someone had settled in behind me. I didn't hear the door open. Didn't hear breathing, but I knew. I knew something was back there. I could feel its eyes. The truck started again. No keys. Just roared back to life. The lights flashed. The radio screamed, high-pitched wail, like every frequency collapsing into one screech. Then it went quiet again. When I turned back, the house was gone. Just trees and fog that I drove. Didn't stop. Didn't even look back. I didn't speak about it for months until I met a guy at the Huffman gas station who drove nights too. We got to talking and he said, out of nowhere, "You ever seen the Static House on FM 2100? He said it like it was a known thing, like a myth, like Bigfoot. I froze, told him everything. He just nodded. "It moves," he said. "Gets closer. If you notice it, doesn't like being ignored." I asked what happened if someone went inside. He didn't speak for a minute. Then he said, there was a girl, Angela, worked nights at the Waffle House. Her boyfriend drove her home late one night. Said she made him pull over to look at it. He waited. She never came back out. Police? Didn't believe him. Thought he killed her. But the dashcam footage showed something else. You could see her walking up the porch, then flickering. Like the tape glitched, and then, no house, just fog. I asked what happened to the guy. He stopped talking, stopped eating, went catatonic. Hospital said he had some kind of breakdown, but before he cracked, he kept repeating the same thing. What? He looked me dead in the eye. She opened the door. The man wouldn't say more, just left. Drove off like the road behind him was burning. I've driven that stretch dozens of times since. Never at night, never alone. And I don't play the radio anymore. I keep the windows cracked. I keep the engine hot, but sometimes, when the fog rolls in thick and the trees hush, I see something from the corner of my eye, an outline. A porch, a window, and I hear it again, just barely under the static. Come inside. It starts with the moon, always the moon. Full and pale as skinned milk, hanging too low in the humid East Texas sky. A swollen eye staring through the pine boughs like it knows something you don't. Folks out near Nacogdoches don't talk about it much. Not the way they used to. Not since those hikers were found folded into each other like stacked chairs in a hunter's blind out by County Road 4. But before that, before it got real bad, it was mostly whispers and warnings. Things your granddad told you by the fire. After too much beer and too many regrets. Things like, you don't drive down Farm to Market 2863 on a moonbright night. Not unless you want to see the dog that walks like a man. No one's really sure where the first sighting happened. Some say it was a trucker hauling produce down from Lufkin who spotted the thing loping out of the tree line, tall as a man, head hanging low, a mouth too wide and too full of teeth. He radioed it in, shaking so hard he clipped a telephone pole not 2 miles later. When the sheriff's deputy pulled him from the wreck, the driver just kept mumbling, "It looked at me. It knew me, but it's always been around." The older folks remember stories from before there was pavement, when it was just wagon trails and moonshine running. Stories about men who went missing with their boots left behind, perfectly aligned at the roadside, toes pointing toward the trees, always with no tracks leading away, like they just stepped out of themselves. That's what got Katie's attention. She was working the overnight at that little gas station off 259, the one with the rusted out sign that never quite spelled market right. She was 23, fresh out of Angelina College, trying to save up for nursing school and far too tired to take old tailies seriously. The gas station sat close enough to FM 2863 that she'd see the occasional pair of headlights roll past in the dead hours. Usually it was just locals or drunk kids from town daring each other to go dog watching, laughing until something out there barked back long low. And wrong. It was just after 2 a.m. when the man walked in, all sweat and tremble. He was barefoot, shirtless. He smelled like copper and creek water. He had 2 deep scratches across his chest, as if something with fingers or claws had raked across him from shoulder to hip. But he didn't seem hurt, not really. Just hollowed out. "They're gone," he said, more to himself than to her. "They saw it. They stopped. I told them not to get out. I told them." His lips trembled. It stood up. Katie called the cops, but by the time they got there, the man was gone. Just a smear of wet footprints across the linoleum floor leading toward the road. His name was never released. No one claimed him. The cameras stopped working that night. It didn't stop with him. A week later, 2 teams from Dibble took their daddy's Bronco out past the logging trail turnoff. They were live streaming some nonsense urban legend challenge or some such when their video cut out halfway through a shaky shot of the moon reflecting off a long, dark stretch of asphalt. All that was left on their channel afterward was a single frame. Headlights pointing at the back of something tall and hunched, its silhouette oddly symmetrical, like it had shoulders. Wide, square shoulders. One of the kids' shoes was found. A mile away, sole still warm, no footprints in the dew-soaked grass. People talk about skinwalkers, about wendigos and chupacabras and things dragged up from swamps too deep and old to be on any map. But the thing near Nacogdoches, it's different. Smarter, maybe, or more curious. See, it doesn't just appear. It waits. It walks the center of the road, upright, slow, and deliberate, like it wants you to see it, like it's daring you to stop. And people do. They stop because it doesn't make sense. A dog that tall shouldn't move like that, shouldn't turn. Its head like that, shouldn't smile like that. But it does. There was a deputy once, Ramirez. Tough woman, Iraq vet. She didn't believe the stories. She was called out after someone phoned in a man in a dog suit, crawling along the yellow line of FM 2863. She rolled up with her lights on full, and her cruiser's dash cam recording. What she saw made her quit the force the next morning. Never turned in her badge, just mailed it in. The video never made it to evidence. But the dispatch log still shows her last radio call. It's not human. I saw it once. Only once. It was in July. I was coming back from my cousin's place down near St. Augustine. Took a wrong turn, ended up on FM 2863, my GPS losing its damn mind, spinning me in circles. The moon was full, so full it made the road look slick with milk. My dog, Rufus, an old lab mix with no patience for nonsense, started whining the second. We passed that old rusted barbed wire fence that marks the county line. He curled up in the passenger seat, ears flat, eyes wide. I thought he was sick. But then I saw it. At first, I thought it was a man walking a dog. But no, just one figure. Dog-shaped, yes, but taller. Too tall. Its back legs were jointed wrong, too long. Its head swung left, then right, and then it stood. Stood. Straight up. 7 feet easy. Shoulders rolled back like a linebacker stretching before a game. And it turned. Not fast. Not startled. Just turned, slow and fluid, like it had all the time in the world. Its eyes reflected the moonlight silver, hungry. And then it smiled. Honest to God, I swear it smiled. I didn't stop. I didn't blink. I slammed the pedal and didn't look in the mirror until I hit the Buc-ee's off 59. When I finally got out, my shoes were untied. I always double knot. Always. Rufus never made a sound the rest of the drive, and 2 days later, he vanished from the yard. No hole in the fence. No fur, no blood. Just his collar, sitting neatly by the back gate. Facing outward. No tracks. They say the dog walks more now. More people seeing it. More shoes turning up on the shoulders of empty roads. Always neat. Always clean. Like the person took them off. With care, set them down, and walked barefoot into the dark. But there are never any prints. Just the shoes. And the strangest part? Every person who's vanished was seen looking back. Last dash cam from a missing kid? She was turned in her seat, staring at something behind her. Her mouth open like she was saying hello or goodbye. That was her last frame. She was never found out, so if you're ever near Nakagdaches and the moon is fat and bright, and your dog starts to shake, and the road in front of you grows too quiet, don't look for it. Don't stop. Don't roll down your window. And for the love of whatever keeps you safe in this world, don't open your door if you see a shape walking upright down the center line. Because if you do, the best you can hope for is that they find your shoes, neatly placed, with no tracks leading away. The first time I heard about the singing tree, I was standing in line at a Whataburger just off Loop 288 in Denton sometime after midnight. The kid behind the counter was talking low, almost whispering, like he didn't want the fryer or the soda machine to hear. He was telling the cook about a girl found in her car near an old live oak on the edge of the loop car still running. Lights on, her eyes open, mouth moving soundlessly until sunrise. When the police opened the door, she was still humming something. Low and old, some church song nobody could quite name. She didn't stop, not when they moved her, not when they tried to sedate her, not even when they put her in a room with padded walls and soft lights. It was always the same broken little tune, high-pitched, almost sweet, like a lullaby for the dead. I didn't believe it then. Thought it was late-night crap from a bored teen. But 3 weeks later, I saw the tree. I wasn't looking for it. I'd gone out late to clear my head. One of those nights where your own thoughts feel too loud and the walls of your house start to close in. I was coming back from a Walmart run I didn't need to take, just driving slow, windows down, letting the air sting my face. Loop 288 was quiet. No traffic, no sirens, just the occasional flicker of a billboard changing its ad. Then I saw the glow dot. It was faint at first. A blue halo around something in the tree line to the right, just past a ditch where the grass grew wild and untrimmed. Not neon, not headlights bouncing back. This was soft, like moonlight caught in fog. I slowed down. I don't know why. Maybe I was curious. Maybe I was stupid. But I pulled over. The air felt colder near that part of the loop. Not windy, just still and wrong. The kind of cold that made your breath catch but didn't fog the windows. The car engine ticked as it cooled, and then I heard it. A sound coming. From the tree. A low, warbling hum, like someone singing through a closed mouth. The same 3 or 4 notes on repeat. A melody just on the edge of memory, familiar and sickeningly sweet, like something you might have heard at a funeral when you were too young to understand what grief really was. The tree itself didn't look special. Just a twisted old oak, roots like claws gripping the edge of the road, bark darker than the others around it. But the glow came from within. I swear it. Not from a branch or the leaves, but deep in the trunk, like the thing had a soul and it was trying to show through. The humming got louder the closer I leaned. I rolled my window down a little more. My dog Maggie started whining in the back seat. She's not the kind to spook, not even during thunderstorms. But now she was pawing at the seat, ears flat, trying to get away from the tree. I should have listened to her. Should have started the car and driven on. Instead, I opened the door. I only meant to stand there for a second. Just a peek. Maybe record a clip, tell my friends I found the haunted tree. But the moment my feet touched the ground, the air changed. The sound got inside me, not just in my ears deeper. It vibrated in my bones. My legs went stiff. My lips began to move. And I swear to God I was singing. I didn't know the words. I wasn't thinking them, but they poured out anyway. Some verse about light and sorrow and a path beyond the veil. The kind of song a mother might sing to a child before drowning them to spare them something worse. I tried to stop. I bit my tongue until I tasted copper, but it didn't help. My lips kept moving. A warm trickle slid down my chin. I turned to the car. Maggie was barking now, loud and shrill, her nails scratching the door. Her eyes weren't on me, though. They were behind me, locked on something I couldn't see. I looked back at the tree. There was someone standing beneath it, or not standing. Floating, maybe. Hard to tell. The figure shimmered in the same soft blue, like it had been carved out of moonlight and stitched with smoke. It was tall, but genderless. And its face, if it had one, wasn't clear. Just a suggestion of a face. But I knew it was watching me. It began to hum. That's when I felt it crawl into my ears. Not sound anymore, but something heavier. Like water under pressure. My eardrums throbbed. I screamed, but the scream came out as a hymn. A perfect, pure note, vibrating the air around me like it belonged to a choir of the damned. My vision blurred. The tree shimmered and bent like heat rising off asphalt. I don't remember driving home. I woke up the next morning in my garage, car still running, radio hissing static. My shirt was damp with sweat and blood. Maggie was gone. Vanished. No broken windows, no open doors. Just her leash curled on the floorboard. That was a year ago. Since then, I've heard stories. People who pass the tree and feel the pull. Teens who dare each other to touch it, only to end up catatonic, whispering that same hymn for weeks, mouths dry and eyes vacant. A man who tried to cut it down was found in his front yard days later, head tilted back, tongue shredded like he'd been trying to tear the music out of his own throat. And the song, it's spreading. Sometimes. Late at night, I hear it in the distance, even when I'm far from Denton. On the wind, in the whine of electrical lines, in the broken cries of a baby through a wall too thin to block the cold. Always the same tune. Sweet. Final. I haven't slept right since. The doctors say my vocal cords are damaged, scarred. They don't understand why it happened all at once. They don't know why I hum in my sleep. I don't remember doing it, but my neighbor says she hears it through the wall. And I've seen the video my friend took when he stayed over once, me sitting upright in bed, eyes wide open, mouthing something no one taught me. They say the tree's been there since before the loop was paved. Some old-timers call it a marker. Others say it was planted by mistake, wrong wood, wrong place, wrong time. But I think it's older than the road, older than the town, older than the bones beneath the dirt. I think it knows things. And I think it sings for a reason. So if you're driving that way and see a glow in the trees, don't stop. If you hear a hymn on the wind, don't hum along. And if you ever wake up with that song in your throat, unable to remember your own name but humming a tune only the dead should know, then it's already too late. You listened. You leaned in. And now you'll sing forever.